We're live. Look at that, getting a little scruffy here, man. What's going on? Man, it must be the weekend. Hope you guys are all enjoying your Memorial Day weekend. It's awesome stuff. And as you can see, if you took a look at the video that I just posted, we did some barbecuing of our own using the grill gas, the liquid LPG, the propane. And we used it and we are going to use it obviously to barbecue and stuff. We probably will do that tomorrow, which is awesome. So hopefully everybody's out there and they're being safe and having fun and having a good Memorial weekend. But we used the gas to start up this 4200 Atlas motor, which was very, very cool because it's the Ameri-Barra. And it's also, for me, it was very cool because it was the first time I've ever run a motor on propane. Now, obviously, all we did was start it up, but it was kind of cool because we started it up on the engine stand, which is always awesome. People love those kinds of things when you can just start it. It's not on the dyno or it's not in the car. Lots of times guys even just start them on the ground, and you can do that if it's sitting on the oil pan or a block or whatever, and the starter's hooked up, and if you have fuel and you have a spark and you can spin the motor over, which we did, you can obviously get fire and it will want to run and it'll roll around on the ground and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But we did it on a stand. And the nice thing is that the starter in this case doesn't go in from the back and doesn't attach to the bell housing. It attaches to the engine actually. So it makes it easy. And it was nice because working with Jerry, if you guys didn't see, if you saw the video that I posted before we did this one, before we did the engine stand start test on the 4200, I also showed you guys one of his swaps that he did in the Rambler, and he put a 2J in it and then did a distributor in the 2J and then also 3 2-barrel carburetors. Now, in that case, it was kind of cool. Now, we drove it around on one of the 2 barrels, which is more than adequate for what we were doing. I mean, that thing would probably go 100 miles an hour on just those 2 barrels. When he wants it to be a little sportier, he hooks up the other ones. But just driving around, you really don't need more than that. But it was kind of cool, and I really like the car. I mean, a lot of people don't realize, especially if you're watching this channel, we do lots of testing with all kinds of really big power stuff. Oh, we add boost to everything. That's awesome. And if that's what you're going for and you want more power, obviously there are ways for all this testing to show you how to get there, whether you have a Ford or Chevy or Dodge or no matter what it is. But these things are something different. And I've mentioned a lot of things before. The Civic VX that I had that I gave to my buddy Chad Reynolds, I didn't ever turbocharge that because I was using that as a commuter car. So its function was something different. It wasn't maximum power. It wasn't to try to get it to run 8s or 9s or 10s or 11s. And that's just the 0 to 60 time. That's not even the quarter mile time. It wasn't about that. A lot of these builds are for different things. So he built this car for his wife, and they drove it across country. So what you want in a vehicle like that is the ability to go, this thing will go more than faster than they want to go, certainly, and faster than I would want to go. It's the same thing. I talk a lot about, like the Civic. I wasn't trying to ever set any top speed records with that like I was with the Sprint. And also, I mention all the time about wanting a Nash Metropolitan. If I had a Nash Metropolitan, I wouldn't want that thing to go any faster than freeway speeds. It wouldn't have to, because that's not what it's designed for. The same thing with my truck. Now, there's lots of ways. Obviously, it's an LS. It's a 5.3. There are lots of ways that I can improve the power output. I have lots of motors that I could put in there. I have turbo stuff and blower stuff and all kinds of things I could put on there. But that's not what that build is all about. That's not what that truck is about. I want it to be stock. I want to get in it. I want it to do the same thing every day. I want to just put gas in it. I want to be able to drive it to West. I want it to not break down. Although just recently I noticed it's starting to get a leak underneath. It's leaking water. So it's either got a water pump that's going bad or maybe a hose. So I got to get under there and check. But those are the kind of things that I want to fix. I don't want to break the made of glass 4L60E transmission because I put boost on it or cam or anything else. I just want it to do what it's supposed to do. It's the same thing for that particular 2J swap that they did. Now, it's really cool because he had to put a distributor in there. And I know some of the early ones came with distributors. His did not. And he used a slant 6 distributor. Did the gear and made all that work so you could put a carburetor on. So you had a carburetor and a distributor. And for him, that's something that out on the road, he can fix. He didn't have the ability to put, he didn't have a fuel injection system for it. He didn't have the harness for it. He didn't have any of that stuff. And he was trying to do it as cheaply as possible. These are all things that he had. Now he had to make the manifold, but he's an engineer. He has the ability to do that. So for him, that's not really a big deal. So in my opinion, when you design something and want a project to go a certain way, and then you achieve that, that's success. It doesn't matter to me. Like I said, from the passenger seat, even more so, I wouldn't want that thing to be any faster. I want it to motor down the road. I want to go, to Cars and Coffee in it. I want to drive it around. I want to do something different with that. If you want a 10 or 9 or 8 second car, then you do something different with that. And it's the same thing with this propane deal. It's a 4200 and an older generation, obviously pre 2005. This thing is really old. This thing might even been one of these early development ones that he got a hold of. And it runs good, obviously. And the interesting thing about this is that he put the propane mixer on there, and these are all IMCO pieces that he's got a bunch of them because he's run propane, as he said in the video, on a lot of different things. I think he had one in a Vega, he had one in a big block truck that they used to tow stuff with, and he had turbos on that. So he has a lot of experience in this, and he also has a lot of great stories and experience in like OEM level testing stuff. So it's really, really cool to hear him talk about stuff. And he's got a lot of other cool things there at the shop that he's shown me and that we got to talk about. For instance, one of them is a cross-flow head for a Ford 300 inline 6-cylinder. So how many of those have you seen? I've seen one. He's got a lot of aluminum head 12-port stuff for the old GMC motors and the old Chevrolet motors. So he's got a lot of really cool stuff. He's got a 4-cylinder version of the Atlas motors. He's got a 5-cylinder version. He's got a lot of really, really stuff, and he's done lots of really, really cool testing. So he's a really cool, and his wife is awesome. They're just good people, and that's the great thing about one of the great things about doing what I do is occasionally I get to meet people that are like this, and you don't realize that people like that are out there. When I say out there, I don't mean he's out there like he's nuts. I just mean that there are people out in the world that have done things that you've never even heard of, that you don't realize that you maybe didn't even know were possible, or that, like I said, you hadn't heard of. And meeting those people and getting to talk to them and interact and hearing all of those things is great. He's never heard the stories of the things that I've done, and I've never heard the stories of the things that he's done. And that's why when you get together with people like that, you get to hear some of this cool stuff. I mean, anybody that's watched the Ford versus Ferrari, and if you've watched some of those things, even though you want to go to other sources and read the books on those to find out what really cool things that they did, and some of the crazy things that they did, but you want to look into that stuff, and you'll realize that back in the day, guys were doing cool things that were every bit as great as the things that people are doing now. They were just different, and they were using the technology that was available then and pushing the envelope of the available technology then, just like guys are doing now. So if you ever get a chance to talk to guys that raced in the 80s or 70s or 60s or whatever, talk to them. They've got really good stories to tell. So if you ever get that opportunity, make sure that you do that. But the propane deal was interesting because I'd never run one, and it was so easy to hook up on the 4200, just like with that 2J motor that he swapped into the Rambler. On the 4200, he hooked up, he got a distributor and made it work on the 4200. Now, he had to sacrifice the variable cam timing, which is not a big deal for what he was doing. He may be using that in a project, and having a propane carburetor was very easy because all he had to do was make a simple elbow, basically 2 flat flanges, one that bolts to the manifold and one that accepts the mixer, the throttle body, or, propane carburetor, you can call it whatever you want. But as long as that bolts onto it, it has an open hole, and then there's an open hole going to the manifold. The thing that I liked about this is that, and we talked about this in the video, that, and you guys have seen some of the other videos that I've done where I tried to mount a carburetor on a 90-degree elbow in front of the LS intake manifold, the long runner LS intake manifold, thinking, we could get a carburetor on there that we could cool the charge air going through the truck manifold, and everything would work out great, except that it didn't, because those manifolds are not designed to flow to wet flow very well. They're not designed to flow fuel. That's why when we tested the nitrous on one of those truck manifolds, I was wondering how distribution would be, because when we're injecting a wet nitrous setup, which injects nitrous and fuel from a single fogger in front of the throttle body, I wondered how well the fuel would get to all the cylinders. And so we tested the distribution of that. And at lower power levels, where we're not flowing where we're flowing a lot of nitrous and not a whole bunch of fuel, that seemed to work out very well. And I think that and we always use a self-imposed limit when we're running the nitrous on a manifold like that. We don't run a big shot in front of the throttle body. In fact, the best way to do it, and Brian Tooley told me that they used to do this back in the day also, that's to run, if you're running your fogger setup, just run it as a dry nitrous setup in front and then add the fuel with the injectors. That way, you know that you get even fuel distribution, and you can get pretty even distribution of just the nitrous because it's going in the gaseous form. And that seems to work out a lot better, even through the torturous path of the LS. And the same thing happened with this 4200 because we were running propane. It's stored as a liquid, and then obviously there's a phase change, and it's injected as a gas. And in the manifold, which is designed to only flow air, there's a much better chance of even distribution from the propane because it goes in as a gas. So I think that we wouldn't have nearly the problem that we had when I was trying to foolishly run my carburetor in front of the LS manifold. So I think that there's a possibility that we could run the propane mixer on that motor with a distributor. Now, we wouldn't have the variable cam time, but what we could do if we really wanted to make it run well is we could do a manual adjustment on the cam sprocket, because we know that it responds to retarding the camshaft on the exhaust side. We showed that in one of the previous videos on the Ameri-Barra on the 4200. It definitely liked retarded cam timing compared to wherever its fixed position was. So we could do that manually, and that would not be a problem. And then we could run propane in it, and that would be awesome. Jerry had quite a few different mixers, different size mixers. And he had some that were capable of supporting some fairly high power levels, and ones that he's run under boost. So that would be fairly simple. And I just think just like this, even starting the motor on propane was awesome. Being able to run it on the dyno on propane would be equally cool. And then being able to run boost, even if we just ran, 6 or 8 pounds or something, blowing through the propane mixer, that would certainly be awesome. Now we may need to adjust the flow level that we have. I don't know if just hooking up a single canister for our barbecue would be enough, or if we have to have more flow. So let me know if you guys know anything about that. We could hook up multiple ones, or get a bigger container or a bigger line, whatever is necessary. I don't know exactly how much the flow rate is and how much we would need to do, but I'm sure that guys have done that. I'm sure that he would know, because he had them on the big block, and I'm sure that thing had to be making 600 or 700 horsepower anyway, which is more than we would be doing. So that's another possibility, again, running propane, if only because, not that I would think about doing that on something, it would be kind of cool. I just think it would be awesome because I've never done it. So that's why we kind of, go outside our comfort zone and try to do things that we've never done before, just as a learning experience. Because when he mentioned the propane thing and was able to start the motor on it, I immediately started going down the rabbit hole and learning about propane. Okay, what is the, what is the boiling point? What temperature is it? How much temperature do we have to add to it to make it work? What are the flow rates? How do these mixers actually work? So you can go down and learn about stuff, and then you better yourself because you have more knowledge. And if I was going to be talking to him about propane, I at least wanted to be at least a little bit educated, if only so that I knew which questions to ask when I'm asking the person that obviously knows about those. So make sure to watch those videos. Make sure to watch the one that I just put up. I've got some cool stuff coming. I've got more testing. I've got something that just ran recently that's going to be a good comparison to something that I ran previously, and people will like it because it's a Dodge. So that will be awesome. I'm looking forward to running the 360 Dodge. I wasn't able to run it before. I need to get a distributor for it so that we can run that and make sure that thing is, still healthy. And if not, we can rebuild it before it goes back on the dyno and make sure that thing works. And then we can do the piston flopping thing and see how well that works out. So a lot of cool stuff. Let's see what you guys got going on the on this wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Next test, you can Can you cook a hot dog with exhaust from a propane-powered Ameri-Barra? It's funny you mentioned that. Wait till you see what Admiral. Wait till you see what I'm doing. I'm going to revise the thumbnail for this, and it's going to be right up your alley because that's exactly what the original thumbnail was supposed to be. But I wasn't able to get it done. But I wanted to load the video, so I just put it up there with with the one that I had. So it'll be cool. So big Bosch injectors are actually designed for gas injectors as opposed to petrol injectors. Nice. 112 octane makes it a good fuel. Yep. That carb is pretty small CFM wise. Going to IMCO 425 and 2 e-vaporizers, 325 each. Jerry has much bigger ones. He just had that on there. Basically what he does is he wants to start them and make sure, like we do on the dyno, he wants to start them and make sure that they work. And the other thing that we got to test is we got to check the oil pressure. If you watch the video, you saw that. And the oil pressure with any kind of throttle at any kind of RPM has 100 plus PSI. So now he's going to measure the pressure drop from the front to the back and see if there is is indeed a pressure drop going back to the back. The thing that it won't show is it's not going to show, I don't think, whether we activate the VVT or not, because then that's going to have oil bleed just like we would if there's a turbo. So it won't show that, but it'll be interesting to see if there is indeed any kind of drop going across. With liquid injection, you don't need to heat the gas. Yeah, carb ice isn't an issue. Yep, but we can't. This setup obviously was not set up for liquid injection. I know that the later stuff is doing that though. Could have also installed a crank trigger and run at wasted spark. He could have installed a crank trigger. Yes. He does not have any ECU to run this motor, so planning to build custom headers for my track BMW. Straight 6 run between 5,000 and 7,000. Stock headers are 6 into 2 into 1. Will I gain top end with a 6 into 1 header? I don't think so. I don't think you will. And if you did, you would have to play with the header design. Strictly going from a tri-Y 621 into a 6 into 1 may not gain you anything. It might gain you something, but if it does, it's not going to be on your first shot. You're going to have to test multiple different configurations of the 6 into 1, meaning the primary length, and also maybe the collector and the merge and that stuff, and then the length of the pipe after that to find out. To give you an idea, when I did my Honda, and we did a tri-Y on that, obviously, we did 4 into 2 into 1, but we also tested 6 into 1. We tested 15 different header configurations, and this was for a stock-ish B16 to try to find the ones that had, and we tested a number 6 or 8 different B pipe configurations before we came across the one that made the most power. He does not have an OE ECU or the ability to hook that up. So that was not, he did what he could do with what he had. The moonshine test went well. We were able to run the motor, and that's all I wanted to do. And it made power. It just made less power than the E85 and required a whole bunch more fuel. That video is up. So if you take a look at it, it's up on the site, up on the channel. Propane mixed with nitrous from density. Jerry has a great story about systems that he made way back in the day using propane and nitrous and injecting them together. So like I said, he's got some great stuff. Yeah, I would imagine that would be, Julius, that would be a bad deal if we backfire into that system. Do the diaphragms break if you do if there's a backfire? Bear also used the BBM dual runner intake with LPG. That's cool. I like the runner length. Mike, that's the one thing about propane, and it definitely keeps the oil a lot cleaner. It's also not stripping the lubrication off the walls. Building a B-body 80s wagon, looking to build a 79 L29. Any suggestions on how to get 700 wheel horsepower? Take a look at the channel. There's lots of those Gen 6 454s, and there's lots of them will run with boost, single and twin turbos, Vortex. There's head swaps. There's all kinds of stuff. 700 wheel horsepower is definitely going to require boost, unless you want to build a really, well, even 700 wheel horsepower. You'd have to do a fairly extensive 496 to make that kind of power. Is the Ameri-Barra ready to be called a Barracuda engine yet? It needs to go in a Barracuda, right? I wish I had a 71. That would be cool. Barracuda versus Barramundi. Is a Ford 300 capable of good power? I don't know. I've never run one. I definitely want to, though. We were talking about that. As I mentioned, he has a head that's a crossflow head for the 300. I know, Julius. I need to get outside. It's I don't know. It's like 95 or something here today, so I can get out in the. It's definitely treehouse weather. Oh, got some random bad weather in Colorado, so I can work on my 360 Magnum. Yeah, it's got hot here. It's going to be hot here today, and it was hot. It'll be hot tomorrow. I got to get out and get in the pool with my boys, and we got the aqua scooter, so the underwater James Bond scooter, so that you can dive down and snorkel and stuff. So we were testing those out. They're very cool. We've used those quite a bit. We took a few of them on vacation with us, and I got to dive down snorkeling and go down into some other caves and stuff, and it was it's something I'll always remember. It's awesome. I love being underwater. As much as I like going out and catching snakes, I like that, but also I love I'm a shark guy and love being underwater and doing all that stuff. And the aqua scooters are nice because I'm not 20 anymore, so I can't hold my breath for 15 minutes. But the nice thing about having those is they do all the work. So you're not kicking and fighting to get down. You just aim it down and start going, and the little propeller drives you down. So you're able to have more bottom time and being able to cruise around and look at stuff. They are a little bit noisy, but because of the electric motor, I don't know if that scares away the fish or not, but they're very, very cool. And I tried to explain to my kids that, to them, it's, this is just, something you get at Costco or through Amazon. But I tried to tell them, look, in my day, the only person that had this was James Bond. So that's how cool they are. Uh-oh, Graham's giving up because there's no Buick 455 information. You give up too easy, Graham. Yeah, John brought up a bunch of good points. Propane makes less power volume to volume, but the propane being 110 octane, you can have much higher compression and gain it back, and you can also run boost. But propane burns slower also, so timing is a consideration. That's all important. The thing that I was looking at, because the first thing I look at, just like when I looked at nitrous, is, okay, what is the boiling point? Like, what is this thing being injected at? And I thought, okay, it's not quite as cold as nitrous. Nitrous is 129, and this is negative 42, 43, 44, right in that range, depending on how much butane it has in it. And you thought, that's really cool. But then they heated up even more with the by running the coolant water through it. So it's not injected at a very cold temperature. So it doesn't have the charge cooling that I would really like. and which is why intercoolers are still kind of fairly critical for these things. But it does have high octane, and high octane is really good, so you can run more boost than pump gas and stuff. And I know, reading back through all of Ack Miller's stuff, he's a big proponent of that. And obviously Jerry's run out a bunch of stuff. Honda CBX and Kawasaki KZ1300 6-into-1. I didn't know the KZ1300 had a 6-into-1. The CBX, they made them for that, though. I remember that. Any plans on SRT4 stuff? I don't have one of those and haven't ever run one. Matthew, my dad built a T-bucket with a turbocharged 302 running on propane back in the 80s. He still has it. Makes about 14 pounds of effort pressure. Nice. With methanol, was it more? We didn't run on methanol. We ran on are you talking about the moonshine? The moonshine, it made less power and more fuel. So it was the worst of both. Yeah, there's Grant. That's a good idea to have Jerry to do more stuff with him. We're working on some more stuff, and he's definitely a great guy. He's got a lot, like I said, he's got a lot of really, really cool stuff, and it would be cool just to interview him, to have him talk about some of the stuff that he's done. Because, like I said, when you talk to somebody that's a new guy, I don't mean that he's new. I just mean he's new to me. He has lots of cool stuff to talk about. Yeah, Jason, that's one of the things that Jerry brought up, is that you can use the refrigerant or potential of the propane is very good to use for the intercooler. I don't know. We didn't do any timing changes because we were just free revving it, so he didn't make any changes to the distributor. Okay, Julius, that's good to know that the air intake on the Barra is designed to pop off the throttle body during backfire conditions to limit any damage to the liquid propane gas system. Backfires are way more common through LPG than petrol. What's the octane equivalent of propane? Yeah, 110 is kind of the range that they were talking about. Have you ever taken a 496 underwater? No, I've never submerged one. Yeah, Raymond, somebody had mentioned the stuff about that it being harder to start, and them starting them on gasoline and then having it switch over. Saul, did you run the 4200 E85 NA? I did not. But we ran the motor cold enough and with 91 octane that we ran enough timing to where it didn't gain any more power. So we knew we would max it out in timing. I doubt very seriously that it would gain power NA, but we can try that next because it's going to be run again, and we can put E85 in it just to see what happens. But I want to test it both ways, because when we put them back on in stock configuration, I want to compare what they did to the heads. Now on the 06, we won't have any comparison, but on the 05, we'll have a comparison. So I want to find out if doing the head and redoing the motor had any change in power NA as our starting point. And then we could put E85 in it, and then we could start running other tests. But we want to test a variety of different things, cams and heads, and obviously more boost. Any advice on injector replacement choice for a 460? You should just put stock ones or have the stock ones clean. If you haven't done an upgrade on power, then there's no need to. Those are the 462 valve, I think, were the like the orange top ones, which were 19s. You could put, if you're going up in power, you can put a 24, a 30, a 36. There's lots of injectors available for that. I do have plans for Nova content because I own one, so I can make that work. So, Julius, you want to do a swap? You want to do a Falcon LPG sedan for an SN95 Mustang? We better get the Mustang going fast because the Mustang values are going way up. I know. I need to shave. The stoic value is different for propane than it is for gasoline. It's a little bit higher. It's 15.5 or 15.6 is what the information that I got. Yeah, John, that's a good point that the propane is maybe harder on valve seats because there's it's dry fuel and there's no lubrication. Oh, a Kirker header for the KZ1300 6-into-1. I don't remember seeing one of those, but I don't remember the KZ1300. I do remember the CBX though. Are you going to throw the 4200 into the Nova? I don't know. We'd like to. I think that would be a good choice for it. Good afternoon, my friends. Currently 726 by my time. 726 by my time. I'm here in sunny Southern California. Great to be here. Great to have you. Yes, it is. My thing's showing 730, but that probably was done earlier, though. Get a look into propane injection. It injects liquid into the change state from liquid to gas. Sucks a lot of heat out of the intake charge. Yeah, that would be good. This wasn't that. That's the next level of stuff. Let's see. Have you ever thought about doing? Let's see. Someone had a good question here that I wanted to answer because it's. Let's see. Have you ever thought about doing down tests on exotic engines from Europe? Yes, a friend of mine has a Maserati, which was made by Ferrari, basically, and that just has VVT, I think, on one of the cams, and the Ferrari version has it on two of the cams. He has one of those that he could put together and run, but again, it's just like everything else. Hooking it up is kind of problematic. An AMG 6.2 intake header test, Ferrari Maserati V12. The problem is finding any of those. They, I'm not going to go find those in the wrecking yard. And I'm more of a wrecking yard price range kind of guy. Let's see, Mike, I'm doing a 4.8 with a GT45, Chinese cast log manifold, the true budget build, 600. Yeah, 600 horse will be easy with a GT45. Or an RB SR20 intake. I don't have an SR20, but I do have an RB25. Maddie, send me an email about the Sprint stuff. I have. I'll make a deal on all of it. Tristan, I don't know if that's a function of burn rate. Mad Mod, thank you very much. Triton V10 propane bus engines run 300,000 miles pretty regularly. They run clean from what I've seen in the junkyards. Now, somebody else mentioned that too, that they have LPG propane V10s, and those were actually the motors to get if I was going to do a big bang on one of them to get one of those V10s. Those are cool. Nova engine, turbocharged rotary on propane. That would definitely be other guys' stuff. KZ650B, and it was fast. I rode around. A buddy of mine, Dave Nazarati, had an RD400 that we got to ride around on a lot, which was very, very cool. The rotary guys bring spare motors to the track. So, Flexall, you disagree with the valve seat comment that there's a forklift motors would also disagree. The forklifts do run for a long time, and obviously that Triton V10 runs for a long time too. $117 watching and only 48 likes. Come on, guys. Let's get that light quotient up. He's release the squirrels. Oh, the KZ1300s were shaft drive. I'm gonna have to go. I'll have to go down the rabbit hole and take a look at some of that stuff. When I do natural gas engines at work, the seats are about 20 degrees, so they don't tulip. The valves are super hard, and the seats are inserts, but they're always bad regardless. Maddie, I sent you an email too, but I'll put this email down. Toby16 at AOL. Livermore's in the house. Are you over by Livermore Labs? RB25. Special NASCAR razzle dazzle. Nothing wrong with rotors. I like rotaries. I like the way that they sound. I was just talking to Ish, the guy, one of the tuners over, and they had one on the dynos, a naturally aspirated 13B. He was telling me, man, these are loud. And they are. They're even louder. I think that they're than they are turbocharged. I had an F350 with 351 Windsor on propane. OM plugs look new after a year of driving. Nice. Could I convert the L29 to run on propane? Yeah, that's easy. I mean, you could keep all the intake and all that stuff on there. All you need is the mixer and the fuel supply. You know, if you want to run it fuel injected, then you'd have to do it differently. But for me, I would just put a carbureted intake on it. IMPO propane regulators can be changed orifice size-wise for different motor sizes, right? Inside the motor stays clean because fuel is so clean, right? They do stay clean, yes. SN95s are best with 95 taillights and a convertible model. Got to be clean, factory-esque. So rolling on 20s in a convertible. You can order propane prep kits option on certain engines when purchasing trucks. So that's cool. So, Joyce, the factory Barra LPG motors have different valves than the petrol motors. Forklift is not being used like a motor vehicle. Mark, 4200 power. Local guy here ran a turbo 6-liter on propane using an LS carb intake using 2 propane mixers to get enough fuel. In the GM 2500 truck ran 11s. Nice. Mike likes the New Edge better than the SN95. I like the Fox stuff better than I like the SN95 stuff. Yes, release the Kraken. Rodriguez, mine is a Gen 2 GMC Safari 2-wheel drive. I would like to volunteer my van and pay for labor and for the parts. And what would be my best way to improve my horsepower? Well, take a look at the 4.3 V6 stuff that I have up on the site or up on the channel already. You can add boost to it. You can port the heads. There are camshafts available for it. There's really only one intake manifold if you want to run it carbureted. If you want to run it fuel injected, it's a little harder, especially if this is a later balance shaft Vortec motor with the Spider fuel injection on it. If it's not that, if it's a regular port injection manifold, then you can probably run boost to it. Yeah, you do know. Yeah, that's one of the problems with the 4-barrel or with the propane is you don't get to hear the 4 barrels open up. You don't get the whoa. You don't get that. You don't get to flip the air cleaner lid over and hear the cool noise. Jeffrey, I don't know anything about kerosene. I've never looked that up to see if there's a benefit to that. I don't know what the BTU rating is, so I don't know what the caloric content of that is versus gas or E85 or something like that. Mad Mod. The SN95 does have upgrades that the Fox doesn't have. Like 5-lug wheels are a good idea. And the interior maybe is a little nicer. I'm partial to the Fox because I have one, and that's how everybody is. They like the thing that they like, and I just never liked that. I never liked that body style. I never liked the way that it looked when they changed it. A lot of guys do, and again, that's their deal. Yeah, it's hard to find a clean Fox anymore. This is a good question. Is there any benefit to more cylinders on a 4.3 liter like the V6 versus the V8? In my opinion, there is. One of the downsides is the V6 is better for packaging. It's not as long, obviously. The thing that I like about the V8 and to that extent a V10, having more cylinders allows you to effectively have less head flow to make more power, because in each cylinder you only have to supply a certain amount of airflow. If you have fewer cylinders, the flow rate of the head has to be more to support the power level. So that's one thing I do like about having more cylinders. And in the case of the 4.3 liter V8, there's lots of cylinder heads that you can get to flow the numbers that you need them to flow. And on the V6, the available parts, because the V8 is essentially a small block Chevy V8. The problem is with the V6 is that there's not a lot of support for that. Jewish wants a Cobra R replica. That's good, with a giant rear wing. Yes, as they all should have. Just like back in the day, I remember talking to some buddies of mine, and we all had the Lamborghini Countach poster up because you're supposed to if you're a car guy. And I remember reading in Road and Track and Car and Driver and all those that the car was actually a lot faster without the wings on there. And I'm like, I know, and I'm a top speed guy because that's all that I ever cared about. That I'm like, if I had a Lamborghini, it would have the wing on it, because that's part of the deal. Yeah, the Bear stuff's really impressive. Matt at Sloppy Nose Dario. What do we need to do with Dario? Maybe I missed something. Steve Engel has a Chevelle that runs on propane. Cool. Caddy 500 turbo propane. No, that's not going to happen. So, Mike, you can convert the SN95 chassis to the New Edge version? Does all that stuff bolt on? Got to differ on the Fox opinion. My dad has the same 93 GT hatch since I was born. I like the 60s ranged ones, but the 69 and 70 really got my eye. We were talking about the Fox and up. The earlier ones, the 69, 70, like that body style I really, really like. And I do like a 65 or 66 Shelby, the fastback, not the notch, even though I had a 65 notch. I like the fastbacks on those, but again, you try to find one of those, it's impossible. And the 69 and 70s, I really like those, like a Boss 302. Those are really cool also. How about a Jaguar V12 for the other guys? I have actually seen Jaguar motors in the wrecking yard. I'm a little afraid of getting one. I would think that the odds of that thing still running would be very, very low compared to getting an LS out of the wrecking yard. Can I make an appointment to drop off my 4.3 liter V6 off at your shop? I don't have a shop. I'm not a shop. I don't work on. I don't really do what you're asking. All I do is dyno testing, so that's not for me. Somebody else would have to do that. Fox to me looks like two-door Ford Falcon. I actually like the second-gen Mustangs the best personally, but no one seems to, and there does not seem to be as much aftermarket for them. Is it true? Does anybody know? Flexall wants to know, is it true that kerosene will boost the pump fuel? Kerosene has an air fill ratio. So the stoic value for kerosene is 15.6. So that's kind of like propane. Toluene gas does. Yeah, we know that. Boss 429. those are hard to find in the wrecking yard. Can you put a 460 in an SN95? Yes, you can. I do like the Terminator Cobra too, the 0304. I like those look. Going green is the thing. When turbocharging and improving tune, does it reduce the tailpipe emissions? I don't know that a turbocharger by itself is going to reduce the emissions. A tune certainly can. A V12 on the dyno. A V12 Jaguar, you shouldn't expect it to take a lot of boost. Mexico's in the house. Yes, Terminators are awesome. Yeah, the new edge stuff Mustangs they're nice. They're you know, the Coyote's no joke. Julius, I agree. I would really like the Mustang too, but I would like the King Cobra edition with all the graphics on it. Basically the Trans Am of the Mustang world. And the Recaro edition, like the Indy Pace car, would be very cool. You like the current Mustang? Mustang 2, yes. That's the most underappreciated car in the world. Just the Recaro edition. I like it just for the seats, but the full like Disco King Cobra kind of thing is awesome. Because it came with a V8, albeit not a very good one, but that just means that you could put any kind of V8 in there that you want. Now, I saw a movie. If anybody saw the movie, what is it? Down Periscope with Kelsey Grammer, where he was the captain of the Stingray. The mechanic down there working the engine was pouring whiskey into the diesel fuel. Add another 50 RPM. It's just all kinds of awesomeness. Have you ever worked with David Vizard? No, I have not. I've talked to him a few times on the phone. He's a really good guy. He called me out after I did my first 5-liter Mustang book, where it's all of my books have kind of been like this, where it's just all dyno testing. And he called me up and congratulated me and said it was a great book, and he likes to see that kind of testing because he's that kind of guy. But I've not done any work with him, but he's a good guy. I'd be happy to do anything with him. He does really cool stuff. Is the SN95 a retro version of the Mustang 2? I'd have to look at them side by side to see if that's if there's a resemblance. I don't, Ozman, I don't know if the Jaguar is that fragile. They don't have a reputation of being very stout. The later stuff obviously has more design in it, but the early V12s were not known for their stellar performance. Let's bring back the muscle cars. I kind of like the new Challengers, but they need a slightly longer rear and a chop roof. The thing that I don't like about the modern muscle cars, they have it because of the world that we live in today, but everybody's heard of the 7/8 scale cars that I think Smokey Unick did them back in the day, and they were compressed versions of the car so that they would be lighter and more aerodynamic and faster and stuff. And these cars are all 9/8 scales, so they're all like much bigger versions. If you take a look at for instance, if you take a look at a 71 Barracuda, like a Hemi Cuda, and we all remember them back in the day, that's a pretty big car. But if you set that car next to a new one, to a new Challenger, the new one's a lot bigger and a lot heavier. Even with a big block in it, a new one is a lot heavier. So, and admittedly, they do everything better. They handle better. They get better mileage. They have reduced emissions. They're faster. They do all that stuff. But they would do that even better if they weighed, for instance, what a Fox Mustang weighs. If they weighed, 31 or 3,200 pounds instead of 42 or 52 or 6,200 pounds, whatever they weigh. Yeah, I think it was Dan. I think it was a Chevelle or something that they gave that designation to. With a propane conversion, can you still run nitrous? Yes, you can. A Viper, I think I would still consider a muscle car, only because it's a modern representation of the Shelby Daytona that Pete Brock did, and that's what makes it cool. It and has a modern drivetrain, and it has a V10, which makes it also very, very cool, just from that standpoint. I like them. And my wife likes them too. I like those more than I like the convertible Vipers. I like that GTS Viper. I think it's really cool. I'll have to look up the stock numbers on a Jaguar V12. I think that they're sub 300 horsepower motors to begin with, and for the number of cylinders and displacement that they have, that's not. I think that they're probably even less than that. And you can make any motor make lots of power if you put enough time and effort and money into it. If you port the heads and put cams in it and put forge internals in it and make sure that the deck seals, and if you do all that stuff, you can. But the number of people that would be doing that versus the number of people that get good power from a small block Ford or a Dodge or an LS or anything else, it's going to be much less. And maybe I need to look into the Jaguar stuff and see the years, how they went by and what they were rated at. I've not looked into that. The only interest I ever had in Jaguar were the rear ends when I was trying to do an ERA Cobra way back in the day. The McLaren F1 is probably my favorite exotic car, and it's not the fastest, it's not the quickest, but it's the most out there, and it to me epitomizes what they decided to do. Let's make a supercar. The only thing that I think that they didn't do that they should have done in that car is I think it should have had more power. It certainly had everything else that it needed to have more power. Like I would have liked to have seen, forced induction on that, either twin superchargers or twin turbos, just to add another 200 or 300 more horsepower, because that car certainly had the ability it had the brakes, it had the aero, it had everything that needed to make more power and to do that. And I think that they should have done that because they certainly had the capability. I mean, that was a BMW motor, and it was a really good NA motor, but it could have been a lot more. Joe, is it a good idea to EFI on a 502 crate motor, or should I say carb? It depends on what you're doing. We see a lot of guys, and the guys at West Tech are Steve particularly, and the other guys too. When we see a guy have a carbureted big block like that, or any vehicle, and they say, no, I want to switch to these modern throttle body fuel injections, we try to talk them out of it. Because if you look at, let's say that the fuel injection might give you better fuel mileage. If you look at what the cost of the thing is versus the change in fuel mileage, especially on a big block, you'd have to drive the thing for like 700 years to be able to pay back what the fuel injection cost. And it's not really going to give you much more than a well-tuned carburetor can do. And the amount of time that a lot of these guys are driving these things, I mean, some of these guys may put 1,000 miles a year on some of these things. So why would you care about, oh, I get 6% better fuel mileage, or 10%, or whatever the number is, I get better fuel mileage. You're not probably going to get any more power if the carburetor is tuned properly, because they're both injecting fuel in the same spot. It's kind of got to be dictated by the manifold. So I don't really see the upside unless a guy is trying to get like, okay, I want to remove the carburetor and put fuel injection on because my thing is I want to improve the fuel mileage by 4 miles per gallon or whatever it is. Otherwise, I try to just steer them into the carburetor, and that's where I would tell you is for your 502, I would stay with the carburetor. Yes, Vortec 4200s. You're going to see 300 Fords and the 292 and the slant 6 and all kinds of weird stuff. A 57 Bel Air is definitely cool. But you have to like that car. That's a personal preference kind of thing. Sea Monster, how about as a curve of the same horsepower inline 4 versus a V8, both with turbo? Well, it depends on how much power you're talking about. Take a look at the video that I have up where I'm comparing the Honda versus the, I think it's a 4.8. So take a look at those two power curves and you can kind of get an answer. If you haven't taken a look at that video, shame on you for not looking at that before, because the answer is probably up there already. The V8 is going to have more low-speed power. How far off is the Mopar 360 piston flip testing? I have to go back down there and make sure that the motor works. Would you go blow through carb or EFI on a marine motor, inboard or outboard? I might do fuel injection on that just because I would have better control over it. But actually, if I was going to do that, I would like to blow through a throttle body that doesn't have fuel going through it, that's port injected, just so that I could get distribution unless I was okay with the distribution of the intake design. I saw the 7.4-liter four-cylinder deal. I haven't read up on it or watched it. I saw a snippet about it. The Ecotech is the other guys in the four-cylinder world. The GM did a lot of testing and a lot of work. They set lots of land speed records. They set lots of drag race records, all kinds of stuff. No, I'm not an engineer, not even a trained engineer. Although I like wearing the hat and the suspenders, so that would be kind of cool. Okay, we got 1 minute and 15 seconds left. An 84 Mustang with T-tops. Yeah, that's definitely 80s. Mine is a hardtop, so I wouldn't have got, the reason I wasn't looking at a sunroof or T-tops or convertible, because I was going to road race mine, and we wanted obviously the rigidity. Julius wants to know, Richard, have you ever thought about taking your RB25 apart and putting the head on an RB30 block? I've seen those. I've seen tests on those or seen videos on those, but I've never done it. And I wouldn't do it now because I want to run lots of testing on the RB25 by itself. And again, I'm not looking to make lots and lots of power. I've got lots of motors that can make lots of power. What I would like to do is take that R25 and hook a 5-speed or a 6-speed trans up to it and put it in the 71 240Z that I have and just drive it around. Again, not because I want lots of power, because I have V8s that I can put in there, and that was the original goal for that thing, and it's been sitting forever. But I like the way that the RB looks under the hood of that Z. A twin cam deal is much better looking than the single cam motor that came with it, although I do like the single cam with side drafts on it. But a turbo RB25, let's say it was 300 horsepower or 350 horsepower, would still be amazingly fun in that. And it has the right like visual appeal. It would be good to look at. The GT350 stripe kit. Yes. 7.4 liters and 650 horsepower gets your attention. That gets the old motor revving. Okay, guys, I've got to get going. I will see you all tomorrow. I'm working on some cool videos. I'm going to get those up. If you have not taken a look, make sure to go take a look at the video that I just posted today. And for those of you asking questions that were already on the channel, go to the channel, look at all the playlists. There's all kinds of, any kind of engine family that you want is on there. There's an NA version, an NA playlist. There's a turbo supercharged nitrous playlist. So go on there and make sure that you watch all the videos that are on there. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you all tomorrow. Do, 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 do.